with gold hitting all-time highs in US dollars and even higher in Canadian dollars and holding steady above $3,000 per ounce. Small cap investors are increasingly looking for gold companies that are positioned to capitalize on this historic pricing. Today, look no further than ESGold Corp, an imminent producer in mining-friendly Quebec that is advancing towards production as a company with high margins, minimal capex, and a district-scale exploration opportunity. Their flagship Montauban property is located just 80 kilometers west of Quebec City, and they've got preliminary assessments in place. The economics look fantastic. I'll just give you one number. Cash flow in year one is projected to be $23 million at current gold and silver prices. But if all that wasn't good enough, the near-term producing stuff wasn't good enough, what's the news we're talking about today? ESGold is exploring a potential analog between Broken Hill out of Australia and Montauban, their flagship property, unveiling a potential larger discovery. Here to talk about some of the details is President Brad Kitchen. Brad, welcome back, my friend.
George, it's great to be back. Thanks for having us on again.
Brad, the Broken Hill deposit was discovered in 1883, so 142 years ago, if my math is right. It became the world's largest single source of silver, lead, and zinc. It's generated over $100 billion in historical production. And here you guys are saying, we have reason to believe we might be very similar to them. Where does that confidence come from? Without getting geological and all that, big picture, where does the confidence come for you guys to make this kind of announcement in a press release? Because you must be confident in that in that announcement.
We are, and the leading indicator there was the discovery of the rhodonite on the property. And what that does is it gives us a good indicator that we have a similar structure to what Broken Hill is. And that will then lead to our exploration program, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But if you listen to what Andre Gauthier says, I think you've got the quote there, do you, George?
Yep. I can give you the quote right now because most people would think, well, what's Brad supposed to say? He's the president, and George will just say whatever Brad says. But Andre is your senior geologist, and he said, this deposit shares many geological hallmarks with one of the most famous VMS deposits in the world. That's Broken Hill. Our goal is to use modern technology to answer the key question, just how big is Montauban, which is the ESGold flagship. So you got your chief geologist making a pretty big statement within your press release, which is a pretty big announcement. You got some confidence there.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about this. And we have focused on production. We will be taking the tailings in production in the next 6 months. But the really big news is just how big is Montauban going to be? We've had the experience. We know how to do the exploration. And what's really fun is we're starting to bring in some new technology while we're still putting the finishing touches on the construction of the processing plant. The key to this company is we will be exploring, we will be expanding the resource. There's been nothing done at depth. There's been no modeling done. And the other key is that we're going to have the money to do the exploration ourselves. We're not going to have to go back to the market to do the exploration. We're going to be producing the gold and silver, and that will help us expand our resource. So it's a real game changer for us. Having a target like Broken Hill is going to be a lot of work, but we'll have the resources to be able to do that.
So I love how you gave a big picture breakdown of the items there. So let's dive a little bit deeper into one of them. So one of them is, you said, near surface. So another similarity with Broken Hill, its full potential, its full scale wasn't understood for decades because early exploration focused on near surface mineralization before they ever did any deep drilling. That's the same with Montauban, right? For the longest time, nothing's gone deeper than 100 meters.
George, that's 100% correct. Like that's awesome. You just tagged on it perfectly. This was a mine from 1910 to 1989. There was never a model constructed. It was simply following the veins. There has been 1,600 holes drilled on the property, and we're going to be using that information and compiling that into our model. But none of those holes were lower than 100 meters. With the new technology we're using, in fact, we're almost finished doing an ANT, or ambient noise tomography survey. We'll be able to do a 10,000 square meter survey to a depth of 400 meters that will give us a very clear and accurate picture of how the geology of the site. It's only been done once before in Canada, and that was with a company called Power Nickel, and they were able to clearly define exactly what they were looking for.
That's our friend Terry Lynch.
There you
Power
go.
Nickel, which is now Power Metallic, has done very, very well. And I love the fact that you're doing two things with your exploration. You're running the same playbook on the exploration side that they did at Broken Hill, but you're adding in that new tech, the
Right.
ANT, which they didn't have back then. They for Broken Hill, they had to do it the old-fashioned way. It took them longer. So is it fair to say you're going to get better results and much, much quicker results thanks to this ANT technology?
Yes to both of them, but the better results is the key on this. So there hasn't been, as I mentioned, there hasn't been a model. And just to bring things back to me just for a second, I'm a civil engineer by education. My joke is I'd never walk across any bridge I build. But what we do, though, is we always look for a solid foundation. And what that means with Montauban is to develop a methodical, systematic, well planned out model of how the resource is in place. And that could be down to 400 meters. It could be down to 1.2 kilometers. We don't know where we're going to stop. But the big advantage that we have is that we're not going to have to look at having to hit results so that we go to the market to raise some money. We're going to be doing things properly and better. That's what keys on your word better, because we will be generating our expenditures, or our exploration expenditures. We'll be able to pay for that with the production of the gold and silver from our tailings. And that's just a start. We can go into near surface. There, we don't have an underground resource, but back in 2009, there was a historic 43101 that looked at about $235 million worth of gold just from 0 to 30 meters. That's something that we have to go and prove out. And that's a great starting point. This ANT technology will help us define where and how that resource is in place.
And by the way, look, a lot of people know talk is cheap. A lot of times in junior resources space, a lot of guys say a lot of things that sound really great. But you were part of the Windfall Lake discovery and growth that eventually turned out to be a $1 billion plus sale at the end of the day. Give us just a little bit of history there so people know that, hey, Brad isn't just a guy who's, drilling a hole in the ground and try and tell us all it's a treasure chest. You've got real experience. You got real big win under your belt.
Yeah, that was a really good project, and it's something I'd like to use the same sort of methodology at Montauban. So we took a project that was owned by Noront, and it was a care and maintenance, and they were focused.
Another client of ours.
Yeah, well, they focused on their ring of fire, which made sense at the time. So they let this gold asset sit there. We entered into an agreement with them where we would gain 100% if we were able to produce a bankable feasibility in 5 years. So we went from 0 to bankable feasibility of about 100, about 1 million ounces of gold. And then Osisko took it over and developed it further until they actually sold it last year for $1.6 billion. So 5 years from 0 to bankable feasibility is quite a big feat. That worked out well, and that was because we put together the right team. We had a fantastic geologist, Dr. Jean-Philippe Desrochers out of Quebec City. He had a super team. Again, we used the methodical, systematic approach of discovering how the gold was in situ and just expanded from there. We're going to use the same principles at Montauban. And I'm sure, well, we'll see, but we could be another 12 to 15 years of production after we complete our tailings.
Well, I always, when we have these kind of conversations, I always like to talk ballpark about timing. Just
Okay.
ballpark. I'm not going to pin you down to a specific date, but you've got to do this ANT work, this ambient noise tomography work. Then when you get those results, you're going to follow that up with some drilling as well, because if the ANT tells you there and there, we think you got something, you still got to drill it to actually figure it out. So ballpark, Brad, between doing the ANT and then analyzing the results and then going out and doing some drilling, ballpark, when do you think investors and the investing community you'll be able to you'll be able to give us a better indication of how close you are to your thesis?
Okay, George, I think that's important. And from an operations perspective, we've considered how we're going to roll that out. So we will have this ANT model. We do have the historic information. We do have this
Right.
historic 43101, and we actually have the mine. So the next step will be combining this all into one model. We hope to do that over the next 6 months. We're working with a group already that's compiling the information. We have VTEM, we've got IP on the site as well. So it'll be a combination of many technologies. Then we're going to be doing some surface work. And by that time, hopefully we'll start to get into production so that it will be very easy for us to get 1, 2, or 3 drills on site and start working, could be as early as, I'm going to say, 8 to 9 months from now. There's a lot of work to be done between now and drilling, but that's moving quite quickly, a lot faster than I actually had thought we would. So
And 6 months is not a long time to wait for the what's going to come from the drill. We know the production's sitting there ready to go from the tailings, but 6 months ballpark. And again, I'm not going to hold you to it, but you're ballparking it there. That's not all that long to wait, by the way, for potentially some Broken Hill analog. I think a lot of us will give you that time allotment.
well, and that's important too, because we now do have, the presidents. We can start to plan out what we're going to be looking for. The other thing too is drilling during the winter is not an issue in Quebec. It's actually one of the easier times to drill, but we don't have any issues with water, so we could drill all year round. No, it's something we're excited about, and something that we haven't really talked about over the last 6 months because our focus has been on production. But now we've had a couple of financing initiatives. We've had a small private placement that we're completing for US $2 million. And we're very close to announcing our non-dilutive construction financing, which is another Canadian 6 million. And as soon as we complete that, we will be 6 months away from production. So we're hoping,
Love that.
yeah.
Love the non-dilutive part of that. That's fantastic. Because so many companies just getting diluted to hell, and hopefully you found a way to get that work done without diluting the stock.
Yeah, and that's an important thing too, is we've got to get the message out of what is the value of the company. Are we at too big of a discount to where we should be? If our net present value is 80 million, should we be trading at 40? If it's 235 million, where does that lend us? I'm excited to see what's going to happen as we build out the resource, because now all of a sudden you're going to have cash flow coming in from the tailings. You're going to have near surface a resource, and then we'll be expanding to depth. So we're not sure where this is going to go over the next 18 months, but it's going to be a really, really fun ride. And one that doesn't rely on hope. It relies on systematic work. Some of the PEA, which is already done, we know exactly what the resource is on the ground. We've seen some of the historic 43101s, so we know what's near surface. What we're excited about is to see how much more it goes to depth to 400 meters.
What I really like about what you're saying is you've got the short term, medium term, and long term all look after. That's very rare. Short term, because of the tailings production that you're expecting to take place before the end of the year. Medium term, because you're increasing the size of the resource from 0 to just 100 meters deep,
Yep.
with some decent, with some decent certainty and some confidence that that's going to increase. And then long term is going down from 100 to 400 meters based on what happens now with the A&T and some follow drilling. So I love the fact that you've got all three. It's very rare where a small cap company has all three. It's kind of like an EGOT in the entertainment world. You know, it's very hard to get all four here. It's very hard. You got the SML, you got the short, medium, and long term time. We're going to give you an SML.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it's not an acronym for something else that's
Yeah.
nefarious. I don't think it is, but we're going to grant you the SML award today. Here you
Well,
go.
I like it. I do like it. And the other key in this thing is it's all going to be self-funded, and that's giant. So we keep our number of shares down now. We get into production, we'll be self-financing, and I think that's critical. A lot of companies have that plan. They have the same plan as us. They want to get to a resource and get into production. We're just starting that production component up front. So that's the big differentiation with Montauban and with ESGold.
Last question for you, Brad. And this is more macro market. Have a little fun with the macro market. It seems like for the first time, and you've been in this business for a long time, we've got fantastic tailwinds, not headwinds, tailwinds, which is I already talked about the top of the interview, $3,000 gold and holding. And now we're already here and talk about why 4,000 will steadily be the next target. So that's great. And the second thing is you've got, like, love them or hate them, Donald Trump has lit a fire finally under the butts of politicians in Canada who, for the longest time, ignored, forget about politics, they just ignored our resources. And now there's suddenly this renewed patriotism and this renewed rush to make ourselves more economically self-sufficient. So, how does that feel as, you know, as a president of the company and someone who's been around a long time? Do you feel a shift in the? Oh, and by the way, J.P. Morgan, for the first time in years, put the miners, which are the big companies, but that's good for everybody, as outperform. Right. So it's three tailwinds there. How does that feel as the president of the company? And do you feel that this could be a long-term shift, a long overdue shift in both sentiment and an actual great work product coming out of the industry?
Quick answer is it's fantastic times for the shareholders of ESGold. This allows us to get into production. It gives us the support. Actually, let me take a step back. I've always said from the beginning of the time working at Windfall Lake that the best jurisdiction in the world to do exploration and mining is in Quebec. We're starting to see that support every time we go into the city. The mayor greets us with open arms. They're excited that we're creating jobs. We're adding value. You know, at some point, Windfall Lake even had 250 geologists on it. Not that we're going to get there, but that's a lot of money that's coming into the community. And yes, you're absolutely right. There is that patriotic fervor that we want to do something in Canada. We want to use the resources, and resources aren't just what's in the ground. It's the people, it's the equipment, and it's the knowledge that we have at Montauban. So we're going to be able to use all that and start to get into production and build a new mine.
Well, Brad, they always say good things come in threes. We already talked about that. You got the short, medium, and long term looked after. And now you got the three tailwinds, which is JP Morgan, the price of gold, and the renewed nationalistic, uh, patriotic, we need to build our own reserves and money. So you got two things that have come in threes. And I can't wait to have you back on. But thanks a lot for coming on today. I really like this news. And for people who aren't in the industry, or maybe they're just discovering companies like ESGold now because gold is going over 3,000, you're Canadian, maybe, you know, they haven't really been in this space before. The fact that your company put out this announcement and the fact that your senior geologist made his quote about that, that's a big step. You know, this isn't the Wild West where George Com Gold can come out and say, by the way, I think I got Fort Knox in my backyard. It doesn't work that way. So the fact that you guys have put your money where your mouth is awesome. Everybody should have you on the radar. And it sounds like we're going to have a lot of a reason to be talking to each other in the next 3 and 6 months. So can't wait to have you back. But until then, good luck and keep up the great work, my friend.
George, thanks very much for having us on. And I do look forward to coming back and giving you the updates.
Yeah, can't wait. Can't wait, my friend. For everybody at home, you've been watching or you've been listening by podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple, your favorite podcast platform, to Brad Kitchen. He's the president and director of ESGold Corp, trades in Canada, ESAU. And for our friends in the US, we haven't forgotten about you, ESAUF. Thanks for joining us. Do your due diligence. Visit the company's hub on Agoracom. Visit the company's website. Just do your due diligence. Keep the company on your radar. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. See you next time.
Hey, small cap fam. I hope you loved this interview because more than a dozen people were involved in its production for the sole purpose of making you happy. If so, can you take a moment to support both our awesome guest company and Agoracom? Your engagement means the world to us. First, if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up by tapping that like button. It's a small gesture that helps this interview reach even more potential investors to discover today's guest. Second, we would love to hear your feedback on this interview, so please leave a comment below. Be sure to keep it clean, but feel free to poke fun at George. If you loved what you heard on today's video and want to dig into our guest company right away, take a look at the links in the description below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to never miss another great Agoracom small cap video. Thank you so much. We couldn't do any of this without you. Make sure to come back soon.